pre-algebra. Hey, it's Miss Woodard here. I am not able to be with you again on Monday, September 28th. And so I'm recording the lesson again today for you guys to take a look at. And then I have an agenda with some assignment practice work that I would like you guys to work through. Please know that I'm not shooting out Google Forms for attendance any longer. I'm solely taking attendance through GoGuardian. So although I'm teaching another class, I'll be running GoGuardian, watching your guys' screens and seeing what you guys are doing for that math block on Monday. And I'm also available for any questions. You guys can use the chat box feature on GoGuardian. You guys can email me, or you guys can shoot me just a kind of a message right there in GoGuardian that will direct my attention, and then I'm able to answer your guys' questions from there. So please plan on utilizing that entire block. I try to fill the space from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and I try to make myself as available as I possibly can for you guys during that time. Hey, quick reminder, lots of you guys are clicking the turn in button in Google Classroom, and I know you're just looking at that assignment and there's that button that says turn in. Please know that if you guys click that button, turn in, I'm actually cross-referencing and looking at the actual assignment through whether it be in Nearpod, Classkick, or on your online textbook. All three areas I'm checking to make sure it's completed. I will not update points in the gradebook unless it's actually completed. The turn in button does not mean that you've done the work. So know that those two things don't equate. Today, what I'm going to be talking to you guys about, we're going to move on. I feel like you guys have done really well, and we've done an amazing job on our first 4 lessons. So we're going to be moving into lesson 2.2 today. So I'm going to talk to you guys about what our next topic is. So lesson 2.2, and I think it's a great idea. So I'm writing these things using this whiteboard. I think it's a good idea for you guys to be writing these things down in a math notebook. So I talked about that in our very first Zoom, so I sure hope you guys got a math notebook. And as I'm going through this, you guys are taking notes as well. That will help you on quizzes and tests. So lesson 2.2, we're talking about scientific notation today. So you may have practiced with this, and my guess is you guys have seen this, and this won't be your first exposure to scientific notation. What we're talking about here is you guys aren't going to be doing a ton of computation with numbers. We're just talking about either really, really large numbers or really, really small numbers, and we're finding a manageable way to write those. So you guys can imagine, like, if I was dealing with this number, we're looking at 1,304,000,000. With all these zeros at the end. Now, if I was working with this number, and let's say that I was, it was some kind of a number that I had to utilize over and over and over, I might get kind of tired of writing that out, especially if I had a bunch of zeros behind it. And I'm looking at this number and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm working with it. It's something that I'm dealing with all the time, but I want to find a more manageable way to write that. So what we can always remember is that we got a decimal point at the very end of every number. And I can write this in a much simpler way if I'm able to move this decimal point over, if I'm able to hop it over. Now, with scientific notation, what we're always looking for is we're looking to hop this number all the way over to right after the first digit. That's the rule. So you're going to move always, like, your first step. So the first thing is to move that decimal from the end. You're going to move it over to right after the first digit. So you should only have one number in front of that decimal point. So there should only be one digit sitting in front of that. So when I move this decimal point all the way over, I'm going to include every digit that is not a 0. So you got to make sure that you have that placeholder there, that 3, that 0, that 4. I got to hold every digit to where all of a sudden it just becomes a bunch of zeros after that. We have all these numbers with a bunch of zeros that are after that. We can get rid of all those zeros. What I'm doing when I'm moving all of this is I am actually I'm working in powers of 10. Every time you multiply by a power of 10, you're just moving that decimal over. So I'm looking at multiplying by 10, and then you're going to count how many times did I hop. I hopped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. That's going to be my exponent. Every time you're multiplying by a power of 10, it's awesome because all you're doing is just hopping the decimal point. So it's kind of a really cool way to work in math, so that I can work with a much more simplified number, but recognize that it's a large number because it's actually being multiplied by power of 10 to the ninth power. So that would be an example of taking a large number and we're writing it using scientific notation. So our first step was to move this over to right after that first digit. And then after you guys move it over, you're going to multiply that by 10 and you're going to compute what that power is up here. And this power is how many hops. How many hops did you go over? How many hops did you make? So it should be written always with the decimal point right after the first digit times 10 to some power, and that power is always going to be times 10 to the how many ever hops that you made. So there's one example that I gave you guys of writing in scientific notation. I'm going to do one more just to make sure that I've given you guys several examples here. So I'm going to take another number, and sometimes they're not always large, and this one might actually look a little bit confusing based on just what I explained there. In this case, this is 58,927. So it is 58,000 in terms of, like, if we're talking about money, you're talking about the size of something, and if we're working with this a lot, that would be kind of a hard number to write all the time. And maybe what I'm working in scientific notation all the way across the board. When numbers are written in scientific notation, if they're all written in scientific notation, it's much easier for us to do multiple computations with those numbers. So even though this one doesn't have a bunch of zeros at the very end, still remember that I got the decimal point that's over here. If I wanted to write it in scientific notation, because all the other numbers I'm dealing with are written that way, I'm still going to hop it over. I'm going to hop it over to right after the first digit. So this one's going to land with the 5 in the front. That decimal point's going to be right after that first digit. Now, I can get rid of any digits that are not 0 at the very end. But look at this. This is an 8, a 9, a 2, and a 7. I actually have to keep the 8, the 9, the 2, and the 7. I can't get rid of any of those. Those are actual values. There's a value here. There's a value here, value here, value here. When I hop over, I don't get just zeros there. So I'm still going to multiply this times 10, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 hops. So this number, these two numbers are exactly the same. The only reason why I would actually work and I would write this one in scientific notation is if I was working in scientific notation. We'll get there to where you guys are going to be taking numbers that are like this, and we're going to be adding a bunch of them together. We're going to be subtracting them from each other, and you'll see how much easier it is when they're all written like this than if we have one random one that's written like this. If we have one random one that's written in standard form, that can mess all of our computations up. So there was an example of one that didn't have a bunch of zeros at the very end. So here's another example. I'm going to do one more. This is actually, I'm pulling these right off of your guys' worksheet, out of your guys' textbook. This is not your guys' assignment for today. I'm just going to put a bunch of zeros. I'm not even going to count how many they did there. They did a lot. So look at this number. Got a ton of zeros at the very end of all of this. So remember that our decimal point lands way over here. Our decimal point being way over here, we still want to take this and we're going to go 1, 2, 3 hops, 4, 5, 6 hops, 7, 8, 9 hops, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then we have one more there, 16. That puts it so that we have just one digit in the front. So I'm going to come down, write that decimal point so I only have the 9 in front, put the 7 and the 7 as the placeholders. Those two 7s I have to hold on to, but all the rest of those zeros I get to eliminate by writing this as times 10 to the, and then remember we went 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16 hops. We did 16 hops to get there. So that's 9.77 times 10 to the 16th power. So there's 3 examples of numbers that I wrote in scientific notation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take numbers that are in scientific notation, so they're already written, times 10 to some power, and I'm going to write those in standard form. So now we're going to go the other way. So what happens if you're given a number like this? You're given 4 times 10 to the 5th power. All right, so remember, like this one, like there's a decimal point that's sitting right after this number. So 4 can be written as with that decimal point right there. It's just understood that there's a decimal point right there. This is times 10 to the 5th power. So all we're doing is we're reverting back. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to put that decimal point 5 hops after that. And remember, our placeholders here were always zeros. So fill those little hops in with zeros, right? Then the final solution, remember we go over 3 digits and we put a comma. So we're looking at 400, and there should be a comma 000. But you're going to start from here and you're going to work 1, 2, 3, comma is going to go right there. So this is going to be 400,000. So 4 times 10 to the 5th power is going to be 400,000 in standard form. So there's one example. Let's look at another one. Let's do this one. 8.456 times 10 to the 7th power. Okay, so coming down below, my decimal points right after that 8, I got a 4, I got a 5, and I got a 6. But remember, there's still a bunch of zeros that are after that. All I'm doing is hopping 7 spots. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to put that decimal point right there after I did those 7 hops. Fill in these gaps with zeros to hold those spaces. So I'm going to fill in zeros there. And then remember to actually write this in normal form because my decimal points moved from after the 8 all the way over to here. I'm going to count over and I'm going to go 3 spots and there's going to be a comma. 3 spots and there's going to be a comma. So I'm looking at 84, comma, 560, comma, 000. So 84,560,000. That's going to be what 8.456 times 7 to 10 to the 7th power is. All you're doing is going the exact opposite way. So instead of taking a big number, we're moving it all the way over to after the first digit and counting how many and multiplying by 10. We're going the reverse way. You're just reversing and filling in those empty spots with zeros. So I'll do one more just so you guys can see this. I'm going to do 6.41 times 10 to the 3rd power. One final example. So remember that my decimal point's right here, so I'm bringing down 6.41. And remember, this is telling me that I have to do 3 hops. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put my decimal point there, and I'm going to fill that in with a 0. Look at this and go 1, 2, 3 digits. My comma should be right there, so this should be 6,410. That's going to be my final solution. 6,410 written in scientific notation. You're moving over 1, 2, 3. That's 6.41 times 10 to the 3rd power. Now, in this lesson, all you guys are doing is you guys are writing things in scientific notation or standard notation, and that is it. We're just going back and forth between the two. You guys are not actually taking these numbers and we're not doing any math computations with them yet. We're not taking them and actually like looking at 2 numbers written in scientific notation and adding those yet. We're going to be getting there. I just want you guys to practice going from one form to the other form. So that's my practice for today. Now that you guys have seen that, this is what I want you guys to go and do. I want you guys, your first step, I want you guys to go into Google Classroom. So you guys can go back to Google Classroom. And I want you guys, when you're in Google Classroom, please take a look at that Nearpod lesson that I gave you guys. Nearpod kind of just seals up what I am saying. So if you're struggling with the way that I worded this, or you're struggling with how the examples I gave, Nearpod's just one more. We're going to kind of seal it. So start there and take a look at the scientific notation lesson on Nearpod and know that I see that you guys are doing that lesson because there's checks through there, and those checks send a report to me that says how well you did. So I get a look at like, okay, did you understand that concept or did you not? Know too that I'm not just going to do completion grades any longer. I'm actually looking to make sure that you're understanding the concept. So your grades are going to actually equate to how well you do on these assignments. So please do your best here. This is no longer just like, hey, we're practicing and kind of getting used to how this class rolls out. We know how this class rolls out. You guys got the schedule. So I need you guys to do this Nearpod lesson, and I want you guys to do it the best that you possibly can do because that grade is going to be reflect. If you only get a 50% on the Nearpod lesson, you're only going to get half the points. If that makes sense. So after you guys do the Nearpod lesson, I want you guys to go into Google Classroom. After that, after Nearpod, going back into Google Classroom, and I gave you guys, there's an assignment there. Now, this assignment's going to be just a little bit different. This assignment is actually a Google slide, and that Google slide, you guys are going to make a copy, and what you guys are doing in the Google slide is you guys are actually going to do kind of it's a maze. It's a scientific notation maze, and you guys are going to use arrows that I've already pre-done for you guys. You're going to work your way putting the arrows over the top of the solutions, and you're going to work your way from the beginning of the maze all the way to the end of the maze. So you guys got Google slide that you're doing there, and when you guys are in here, what you guys will see is you guys got 3 mazes. There are 3 mazes in here. You do not have to do all 3. I want you guys to pick 2 of those mazes. 2 mazes are assigned to you. If you do the 3rd maze, you get some extra credit points. So if you're watching these videos and you're going all the way through and you're looking at each step, know that there's extra credit that's involved for you. Step 3. Step 3 is your ST Math. And I'm going to bump ST Math up. I want you guys to do 30 minutes of ST Math today. And I know this seems long, but we got to be matching what's happening in the buildings. And I am checking with pre-algebra teachers here at Riverside to see where they're at. I got to tell you guys, you're right on track. The pre-algebra teachers here are teaching scientific notation today as well. And so they're working on the exact same lesson. They did not do the mazes. The kids are actually doing homework right out of the book. I just like these. I think this is a kind of a fun way to do an assignment. So I think you guys will enjoy that better. And they actually are putting in 45 minutes most days on ST Math. So that's almost like half their time. I'm going to just expect that because you guys are on devices and you guys are looking at the screens, and we're at most, we'll be doing 30 minutes and expect that it'll be 30 minutes most math days. So step 1, Nearpod lesson. Step 2, go in and look at those mazes, complete 2 of those. And then step 3 is 30 minutes of ST Math. And remember, I'm looking at your screens and I do want you to fill this time. This is 10 to noon. This is your guys' pre-algebra time. So I need you guys to make sure that you're filling that entire block. And that's how I'm going to base your attendance scores. If you're not here for the entire block, don't expect entire points. If you log out at 11 o'clock, that's half the time, so you're going to get half the points. So everything's going to start getting modified and adjusted based on what your efforts are and what you guys are doing. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm available by email. You guys can also shoot me something in Google or in GoGuardian in the chat using that chat feature. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you guys. I can't wait for Thursday. We'll be back on to Zoom doing something live then. Thank you guys so very much. Have a good day. Bye.